All right, now we need to make the casing for it. Now, I am kind of doing the guesstimate casing version, and I'm going to show you what that is. But there's a couple things we need to do to prep before we sew in that casing. We need to make sure that this is all nice and straight. So I want this seam at the very top. Okay, and what I'm going to do actually to kind of stabilize it is I'm going to put in pins. So I'm going to line up all those seams there. Make sure the seams at the top and these two seams are meeting. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay. And I'm just going to pin it all to stabilize it. Once I've done that, I'm going to show you a trick that I do at the sewing machine. You'll need a seam measurement and some washi tape. All right, let's go over to the sewing machine. First thing we're going to do is we're going to sew a top stitch around the very top, and this will also help sew our gap, our turning gap, closed. So we're just going to do that right along the edge here. And I'm just having the edge of my foot be right along there, so it's about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're just going to go all the way around, top stitching. Alright, now that I've sewn all the way around, I've sewn my gap shut. However, I'm actually going to put the pins back in because it stabilizes the entire thing while we're going to be sewing that casing. So, pins are going back in. Alright, I promised you a trick using your seam allowance ruler and washi tape. Now, I want to have my casing start 1.5 inches down from the top, but there's no 1.5 inch mark here, right? So we are going to make one. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my little ruler here with that. See, it's just barely past my plate there. And I'm just going to mark it with my washi tape. That way, I am basically making a new follow line for me. So just going to slide underneath here. Ooh, we're going everywhere. Good. Oh, slid. There we go. Yep, looks good. Okay. So now I've got my 1.5 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to take this in and I'm going to line it up, and you can see how it lines up with the opening I've got there. I like to start just a little bit past it. So I'm going to line that up. And I'm going to sew a straight stitch using this as my guide, top stitching on this material. And you might need to help it through a little bit, especially at the seams because you're dealing with a lot of fabric. It's okay to help your fabric out a little bit there. And as I'm going, it's okay to remove these pins now since I've got that nice stabilizing seam in. What you're also going to want to do is use your hand underneath here to check and make sure that that fabric is flat and taut and smooth. Just to make sure everything is going smoothly. And some of these pins are just out of range. I don't want you to think I'm sewing over pins because I'm not. And we're back to where we started. Okay, so as you can see, it's there and it's nice and smooth. Now I'm going to remove this tape, and we had set it at 1.5 inches, so now I'm going to add 1 inch. So we had it at 1.5 inches, so now I'm going to set it at 2.5 inches, so we have 1 inch gap. And same process, we'll lay some washi tape down, make sure that it's nice and straight. There we go, and we're good to go. All right, so now when you put this on, see? We're now going to sew the bottom of the casing. Top stitch all the way around, again, using this as your guide. And the nice part is that having that stitch in there already makes it nice and stable. And again, this hand in here is just making sure that fabric is flat and nice and going where it's supposed to go. So here's the other side with that other opening that we're sewing across. All right. And we've got our casing. Now it's time to run some ribbon through. All right. So here's our lovely bag, and doesn't it look cute? Looks great. We have this casing, so now it's time to feed the ribbon through. And this is the ribbon, of course, that makes up the little straps and the ties, and it cinches in the top and everything. So what you'll need is you need ribbon that will go from here to the casing, across, back, and back down. Okay, I'll show you what I mean. So this is probably about, I'm going to say this is probably like 11 inches, 10 plus 10, that's 31, plus about another 11. So we're really looking at about 42 inches of ribbon for each side. So that's a total of 84 inches. Don't you love how math actually does come in handy when you're sewing? Okay, I'll be honest with you. I don't measure out it exactly. I just eyeball it. So let's see. Find my little gap here, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And that's what I need. Okay, so there's one side. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. And I like to have the straps be different colors just because I think it adds to it, especially when you're doing mismatched fabrics like this. So again, we're going to start down here. And you are going to want a little bit of extra just to tuck in there to sew. So up, over, back, down. Just cut off a little bit of the excess. Okay, so now we're going to thread it through. And honestly, the easiest way is you just, take a safety pin and thread it through. And you'll find it actually slides really easy because of the slickness of the back of the Cuddle fabric. So all you're going to do is you're going to go through. And we had like kind of a wider gap here. Now if you did cording, you could actually make this casing smaller. So you wouldn't have to make it a whole inch. You can make it a half an inch. I don't really recommend making it smaller than that just because the thickness of the fabric, it can make it really hard to thread through. And we're just going to come up for air here for a second. And we're going to thread this through like that. You want to make sure you don't pull it through. And then we're going to come back down and in. And the other thing, this is a good time to check that you don't have any twists in it. So we're going to go back in. And thread it through. And you're going to do the same thing for the other side. Okay. All right. So once you've got that, we're going to make sure that those are nice and neat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tuck these ends in to that gap that we had down there. And since it's ribbon, it can smush a bit. And we're just going to sew right there our little 1/4 inch seam allowance just really close to the edge right there, just to get those in there and really nice and secure. I prefer to do that by machine just because then I know it's not going to go anywhere, especially when I'm going to give this to a small child and they're going to tug and tug and tug on it. Always better to, I think, you do overkill when it comes to things like that, even though if it's not as pretty as a hand-sewn blind stitch. Okay, so again, for the other side, same process. The only thing is that, of course, when we come to this side, we're going to encounter the other ribbon. And it might be just a little more difficult to thread through because you are dealing, of course, with that other bit of ribbon. Again, just come up for air and pull it through and just to see where everything's at. Get that lined up there, okay? Make sure my thing is nice and straight and just go back in. The other thing is that you don't have to do the casing as far from the top as I did if you want a little more room. Personally, especially with the thicker fabric, I think I like it a little bit more away from the top because it gives it that nice bunched ruffle. But it is all a matter of personal preference. You can be the designer. That's the wonderful thing about sewing stuff yourself. And see, you got caught underneath the green ribbon. We need to just move around that. Is that you get to decide. Now you also need to watch out for this. You don't want to pull your ribbons through with you. We're just going to pull that out. All right, last step. We are going to tuck those ribbons in on each side, and we're going to try and just make sure that they're as straight as possible, however you want to do it. And we are going to find our little gap, tuck them in, and sew them down, and we'll be finished. And there it is, all finished. I'm ready to go on some little girl's back and make her really happy. And you're finished. You have this really cute backpack, and it feels just as good on the inside as it does on the outside. Actually, I think it'd be really good to travel with in the car because you could stuff like stuffed animals in it to play with, and then they could use it as a pillow. And it's versatile too. So like the one I showed you is actually on the smaller side. If you wanted to, you could make a bigger one by just adding squares or half squares to it to kind of build it up. So the principles would be the same basically, but just adding squares to it. If you like this tutorial, there are several more on my website, fleecefun.com, that I know you'll enjoy. All my tutorials are free, and so are my patterns. Pretty awesome that way. Also, be sure to check out the fleecefun.com online shop where you can find stuff like these Cuddle cakes that were featured in this tutorial, as well as notions and sewing tools that I use in all my tutorials. Also, let me know in the comments below of a tutorial that you want for spring. I'll be honest with you, when it comes to Fleece Fun, spring and summer, they're a bit of a challenge. So inspire me, give me some ideas. Let me know in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe and give me a thumbs up for my hard work here. Have a great day. Remember, velvet is pretentious, fleece is fun.